This was a very, 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 very bad week for Republican Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma. Step on a rake bad, cringe bad. So bad that the only thing that could have made it worse is if lots of people hadn't noticed how bad it was. But here we are. The ranking Republican on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee had been promising for months and threatening for months that he would attend the UN Global Warming Conference in Copenhagen to lead a truth squad, what he called a truth squad of global warming deniers to try to undermine the international negotiations there of the President of the United States. Now, as it turned out, Senator Inhofe's truth squad was just him. A few of his aides and one staffer. And instead of submarining America's official agenda at the conference with a series of talks with influential leaders or a high-profile speech or something, Senator Inhofe spent all of 3 early morning hours on the ground in Denmark. He could not get any meetings with any representatives of any of the 192 nations represented at the conference, including our own. And he did not give a speech. However, according to Politico, quote, Inhofe's aides eventually rustled up a group of reporters from the top of a flight of stairs in the conference media center. And then it got really embarrassing. As Senator Inhofe addressed the group, he said the global warming hoax started at the United Nations and was spread because it was believed by the Hollywood elite. A reporter from the German paper Der Spiegel then told the senator, quote, that's ridiculous. You're ridiculous. Senator Inhofe apparently ignored the remark, and after he left, quote, some reporters were still a bit confused about what had happened and who he was. His name is Inhofe, a German journalist told a Japanese reporter, but I don't know if it's 1 or 2 Fs. It's just the one. Having executed a textbook example of white-hot fail in his effort to embarrass President Obama abroad, Senator Inhofe got another kick to the gluteal region late this afternoon by President Obama. Very symmetrical. Against apparently long odds after a frustrating week of possibility fading, the president pulled off some fairly acrobatic diplomatic maneuvers and emerged with an agreement, albeit a non-binding agreement, with China, India, Brazil, and other nations on climate change.
Today we've made meaningful and unprecedented, made a meaningful and unprecedented breakthrough here in Copenhagen. For the first time in history, all major economies have come together to accept their responsibility to take action to confront the threat of climate change.
Joining us now is NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight. It's good to have you here.
Good to be with you.
I know that you have some pretty extraordinary reporting about what actually happened today in Copenhagen when President Obama tried to get a climate change deal. How did it all happen?
Well, it's the craziest thing I've ever read. It's a TikTok given by senior officials on Air Force One as it is now flying back to Washington. The president left before anything was signed, sealed, or delivered, citing the snowstorm. Aides said that they wanted to get him back to Washington, but you know what's happening on the Hill this weekend. It is the health care showdown, so you know what he needs to be doing. But that said, he tried to get a second meeting with China's Premier Wen, and it is really, as one aide described it, the 800-pound panda in the room is China when it comes to getting anything done on climate change. And Wen was not available, and then he went to a meeting, the president did, and there was an underling, a junior Chinese aide with all of these other heads of state, and the president said, you know, basically, I'm out of here. Let's get a meeting with Premier Wen. Well, when they called, and this does sound like an old, an old Laurel and Hardy routine, they were told that Wen was already leaving, that the Chinese officials were at the airport, that in fact the Indian Prime Minister was already at the airport, Prime Minister Singh, and that they finally could talk themselves into a meeting with Premier Wen at 7 o'clock their time in Copenhagen. The president gets there, and that was the fracas you saw because the pool was supposed to be going in, they thought, for a meeting between China and the United States. Instead, he found all these guys that were supposedly at the airport already, Brazil, South Africa, and India, in the room. They were caucusing against the United States. So there you go. He didn't get what he wanted, but they accused him of barging into a meeting, and he came out with something. Better than nothing, but clearly a very disappointed Barack Obama coming back because, Rachel, it's not binding. They didn't get the goals. There is no transparency. There's no commitment that they will do anything except announce what they have achieved. And if China announcing what they've achieved is good enough for the development developing countries, the poorer countries, that would be very surprising indeed.
In terms of the sort of diplomatic acrobatics today, isn't it some sort of a big deal if India and Brazil and South Africa and I guess maybe China lied to the United States about where their negotiators were? They said they were gone when they were there and in fact talking behind our back?
Exactly. I mean, it's a real dissing of the United States. It's very disrespectful. It shows that this relationship with China is certainly not as cozy, as close. All of this reaching out and all of these bilateral meetings have not produced the kind of trust on an issue this big, an issue of such economic importance to these individual countries, but an issue of such global importance. I mean, you can't overstate the importance to the world, but they blinked, they backed off, and Barack Obama at least forced them to confront the fact that they had to make some kind of agreement before they left, but it's a lot less than meets the eye.
Andrea Mitchell, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, especially with this bizarre news that I wouldn't necessarily believe if you were not reporting it, but you make me believe it. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Andrea Mitchell Reports airs weekdays at 1 Eastern right here on MSNBC.